It's literally teaching you the wrong thing. The wrong thing. And it's teaching you that. Crazy. Alright, so I'll just try to... Over the last 6 years, has Duolingo A, gotten worse, B, gotten better, C, remained about the same and just switched some things for others, or D, I guess, was never even really worth talking about? As much as you may believe that I would obviously say, well, D, it was never really worth talking about, that's not true at all. But it really confuses me that people say it has improved, especially over the last year or two. I don't see how you can hold that position. And why I want to talk about it is that this is really the core of where I disagree with people who say that Duolingo is great. If people want to use Duolingo, I don't care, right? It doesn't bother me at all. But it bothers me when people are like, it's great, I'll not have you say a bad word about it. If you don't like what I have to say, go make your own videos. I don't have any problem with other people making videos saying, nah, Duolingo is great, Lamont's wrong. That's cool. And the other thing I want to talk about in this video is how a lot of people seem to think that whatever their position is the generally held position, right? So they think like, oh, it can be effective for beginners, but blah, blah, blah. But no one actually thinks it's getting you to fluency. Bullshit. Lots of people think it's getting you to fluency. What planet are you on? What I want people to acknowledge is that whatever position you hold, whether you think it does not work at all the way to the people who think that if you just do Duolingo every day for about 4 months, you'll become completely fluent. Thousands, if not millions of people everywhere on that spectrum exist. The people who say that get to dismiss lots of things that I'm saying based on the fact that like, oh, well, no one actually thinks the thing that you're arguing against. Like, no one thinks it's that effective. Why'd you have to make a whole video about how it's ineffective? It's like, lots of people think it's very effective. It's the most popular language learning app by a very, very long way. There are obviously people who think it works. And saying that no one believes that Duolingo is genuinely effective is just ridiculous. All you have to do is go through my comments. Thousands, if not millions of people have all different opinions on how effective Duolingo is. This is on Better Than Duolingo, the 5 language learning tools and apps. And this woman, I know it's a woman from like profile picture and name, says Duolingo now has Arabic. A lot of people don't look at the time that the video was posted. Now she says Duolingo now has Arabic, which shows that she at least understands that the video was posted at a time that maybe it didn't have Arabic, so that's fine. But I did get a lot of comments in the first kind of 3 years that that video was up from people saying like, Duolingo does have Arabic. You're clearly an idiot. I could do literally weeks of videos on the weird comments I get, and like everyone gets them. There's another creator I follow who said that like for ages a bunch of his comments were like, hey, you cut your hair again. Oh, your hair's short again. Oh, now it's like long again, and now you're doing this. Like, man, your hair grows really fast. And it's like, it just blows my mind that people are that unaware of like how the internet works. So moving on. I said, yeah, this video is 5 years old, but also Duolingo Arabic is garbage. And I was being a little bit kind of strong here, but I said, and so is Duolingo as a whole. In reality, I think that it is more nuanced than that. I don't think it's just you just able to say like, no, Duolingo always sucks all the time for any situation. That is not what I'm saying. Anyway, this person actually responds pretty nicely given how strong I was. She says, I actually still found the video useful, so thanks for putting it together. Well, yeah, it's 5 years ago. You're welcome, I guess. Overall, your assessment is still dead on. All I remember about that video is that it's the one with the joke about irregardless. And do you speak any languages fluently? Do I count English? Well, you just said irregardless, so no. I got a ton of comments about that as well from the like so-called descriptivists saying, well, that's actually irregardless is a word. Yeah, but you sound like an idiot, so like you can use it if you want, but you still sound stupid. But here's where it gets interesting. This person's still writing, and they say, however, Duolingo has improved, and I find it a useful supplement to the curriculum I'm using. I'm also a returning student and find it useful as a refresher. Where am I?
Inside the internet.
I can't see anything.
You can see everything, but no one can see you.
Why is that?
Because of me, Surfshark VPN.
Weren't you a platypus last time?
Surfshark can change form at any time.
Spider-Man?
I'm not Spider-Man, I just connected through New York.
So you're still Surfshark?
I am everyone and everything, and also no one and no thing.
Did you just impart wisdom to me telepathically? Whoa, Surfshark makes browsing the internet safer while opening up sites that would otherwise be blocked. It also includes features like a full antivirus, alternative ID generator, and a webcam blocker. And to gain access to it, people can use the link in the description or the QR code on screen to get a discount and 3 months for free on an unlimited number of devices so that they and their household can safely enjoy the internet from anywhere, anytime. Damn, that was cool. You just told me everything about Surfshark without saying anything.
That was not everything. But to find out more, use the QR code. Or the link. You can also use the link. The link works. Or the code. Your turn.
I don't know what happens next.
You have to make it look professional by saying, back to the video.
I'm not sure that'll work.
Just do it, okay?
Back to the video. There are kind of, I would say, 3 schools of thought on how a language is learned most effectively. Now, of course, you can mix and match. I do mix and match myself. Most people sit pretty heavily in one of the 3 camps, and they are speak early, speak a lot. So it's like just start talking, just say whatever. If you can only say como estás, then say como estás, and you just kind of keep going from there. That's speak early, speak a lot. Then there's like the skill building approach, which is like, here is how the language works. This is a verb. This is how this verb is conjugated. This verb isn't conjugated when it goes with that subject. Read how the language works. That's what in this kind of world we call the skill building approach. And then there's the third camp, which is the one that I'm fairly firmly in, and that would be the listen and read a lot. I like to call it SAMI, self-administered mass immersion, so that is like a good amount of the language every day, or as many days as you can, 2 hours of listening to an audiobook, watching movies, that kind of thing. That's a pretty quick and dirty overview of it, but it seems like this person's coming very much from the skill building approach. She believes that really the language is learned when you learn something about it. This is where verbs go in this language. From the way she writes, it seems like she very much thinks like the language is learned when you learn that thing about it. People in my camp would say, you don't learn languages like that. That is not how our brain picks up language. Our brain picks up language when we hear language. And the thing is, whenever you put someone in a category like you, like, oh, obviously you're like a skill building person, they will quickly defend themselves by saying like, oh, no, I believe immersion is important. The thing is, they give themselves away when they say that, because the person who is in the immersion school would never say, I believe immersion is important, because you wouldn't need to, right? They're saying like, I believe that immersion is important as well, but they won't give up the kind of skill building core of what they're saying. They're like, you need to do all the grammar, you need to do all this stuff, and also you need to immerse. We, on the other hand, would say, even when you can't understand it, you need to immerse. That is non-negotiable. You must immerse, you must spend a long time with your brain just steeped in the language, just sitting there, soaking it in. You will eventually get to the point where you understand little bits, then you'll understand more, then you'll understand more, and then one day you'll understand so much that it's like this kind of explosion where you're like, I don't even think of this as a foreign language anymore. We're saying that that part is non-negotiable. And then from there, to become a better speaker, you'll also want to speak, and also to help you pick up the immersion faster, it's also good to have a look at a few things of grammar. Lots and lots of immersion, completely non-negotiable. As much speaking as you need to actually develop fluency, and as much skill building as you need to just to speed up that immersive process. Now, how much of each of the 3 things may depend on various factors, but one of them is absolutely non-negotiable, and you are not getting any sort of fluency without spending a massive amount of time listening to and preferably reading the language. Whereas the skill builder would say, well, you are not getting anywhere, you are not becoming fluent without spending a lot of time learning the language. They're different things. If you're wondering what happened to the Speak Early, Speak a Lot school of thought, I don't happen to be talking about that one right now because that is not the camp this person is in. So we got the immersion one, that's me. We got the skill building one, that's her. So I'm interested in the timeline here when she says Duolingo has improved. Since when? Obviously there was a time when Duolingo was in its infancy that it did get better for like maybe a couple of years, maybe even 5 or 6 years, but then it got worse. Now she gives us a clue as to when she's talking about. Duolingo has made some huge changes in the past year, and there are now better grammatical instructions in the app. Okay, a lot to unpack there. Obviously, changes that they make have to be better for someone, but the almost unanimously held opinion is that the changes that they've made in the last year are better for the business and better for shareholders, right? Which I guess is like, that's better for someone, but I don't think that it has improved the customer experience. And I would genuinely like to hear from anyone else who thinks they have, and specifically what do you think has improved? And then there's this, there are now better grammatical instructions in the app. On that front, we're gonna have to kind of not even agree to disagree, but just agree that we're not having the same argument at that point. Because I would say, like, who gives a crap about grammatical instructions? Often when apps or like things that I'm using to learn a language have like some grammar instruction, I deliberately don't read it. I will go back and read it if I'm like, okay, this is confusing me and I think I can just work it out if I just get a little bit of an explanation. This is one of the things I hate about Pod 101. I love Pod 101, but when they start saying like, oh, the fifth declension of this word, I'm like, shut up. You are literally making the language more complicated than it really is. Duolingo streamlined their lessons as well. It's less all over the place and more one progressive program. That was maddening. So she's saying like, it was maddening before when it was all over the place. Here's the thing though, Em. Language is all over the place and there's no getting around that. The reason that so many language learning apps and programs seem really bad or are really bad is that people want this kind of one thing after the other approach. Hello, how are you? My name is. But language doesn't fall into neat little boxes like that. Some of the most ordinary things we say to each other all the time in every language are some of the most linguistically complex things. And some of the things that are the most deep and meaningful things can be some of the simplest linguistically. But when apps and whatever start covering that stuff, if they ever do, people go like, well, I don't care about this, I don't care about Shakespeare or whatever. And it's like, no, the linguistics of it is simple. And that's what they want to teach you. But that's why it doesn't work, because it's all over the place. It's not progressive. Language doesn't go like this thing, and then this thing's a little harder, and then this thing's a little harder. And then that's not how we speak to each other. We draw on any and all language that is in our head all at the same time. Native speakers or high-level speakers of any language are literal experts of just putting these pieces together. But everyone, when they come to an app, they want it to be like, now I learn this, now I learn this. And then they complain, and then I tried to go and watch the bridge, and they didn't teach me this. And it's like, because you wanted it to be this streamlined process, and amazingly, the word for bridge didn't come up. I am, you are, and he, she, or it is. Where does am come from? Why does be turn into am? Why does be turn into is? Why does be turn into are? It just does. It's obvious to anyone who speaks the language at all fluently, but it's very complicated inherently. And people want it to be this streamlined process. You can't make language a streamlined process. That's why self-administered mass immersion works a lot better, even though at first you're just like, what the hell is going on? Nothing makes any sense. Just in case you're wondering about my history with Duolingo, I had a massive streak. It was like over 1,000 days. I think about 400 to 500 of those days were on Swedish, and that's how I got started in Swedish. But I didn't actually make any progress in Swedish until I started doing things that required me to not understand what was going on. Doing things where I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I'll try and pick out the words I know. That's really when I started making any progress in Swedish. So I'm not saying that Duolingo can't get anyone started. I'm just saying that at least in this context, what she's talking about, the grammatical instruction and stuff, it's irrelevant. I don't care. And also, you can't streamline language. It's not a streamlined process. The comments section in Duolingo is probably the most valuable part of it, honestly. Okay, some of you will know why I'm looking puzzled. They got rid of the comments section 5 months ago. It was a while ago. I don't know how you could still think that there was a comments section, because there isn't. And I went looking to see if maybe if you're on some old platform that they haven't updated or something yet, you can still get the comments section. No, for the record, I disagree that the comments section was actually ever that great. At the time, I didn't have the capacity to express why. Whenever I'd read something, I'd be like, okay. Now I realized that, well, at least in my opinion, that's not how languages are learned. You can't read explanations of the language and be like, oh, right, yeah. That isn't really how your brain takes in the language. It's not how it molds itself to the patterns of the language. Occasionally I'd get little tidbits from the Swedes in there who were like, well, you can also say this, and note that this was popularized by this song or whatever. That sort of stuff is useful, but I never really got anything linguistically out of them. Even when I was a fan of Duolingo, when I was using it actively, I was never a huge fan of the comments section. But it didn't hurt anyone. If you wanted to use it, it was there. And people like Evan Edinger, original Duolingo king, he's up to almost a 3,000-day streak and stuff.
I cannot overstate just how useful the sentence discussion tab was for my journey learning German using Duolingo.
The whole Duolingo experience is kind of based on skill building, and the comments section was probably the best way to enhance that experience of skill building. So in that way, it makes sense that lots of people who use Duolingo would say this is a good thing. And so I don't disagree with that. They also replaced it with AI and made the AI feature something that you have to pay top dollar for. That is the only tier on which they replaced anything like the comments section, and they replaced it with AI, and they made it 15 or maybe 16 Australian dollars a month. Let me check how much it is. Whoa! I just did the comical, but that's genuinely what I did. Perhaps the biggest drawback of Duolingo Max is just how expensive it is, coming in at $168 a year, and I'm assuming that's US dollars. If you paid monthly, it would be $360 a year, still 14 US dollars a month if you pay for the year. That is a crazy expensive subscription. To give you some context on that, because there are always, it doesn't matter what something costs, there will always be someone who's well, actually, if you work it out this way and this way, it's not that expensive. Righto. Netflix costs money as well, or Disney Plus costs money, HBO Max or whatever. It's yeah, and you can learn languages with it, and it's significantly more fun and significantly more effective and cheaper than Duolingo Max, and that is what they replaced the comments section, which was free, with. I wrote 3 hours ago, I'm glad you like it, but just so you know, almost everyone else agrees that it has actually gotten worse. There's a name for this process, enshittification, when companies realize that the business they've built would make more money if the customer had to pay to get a better experience, so then they make the experience worse deliberately. And I linked her to Evan's video in which he talks about sentence discussions. They've removed sentence discussions. And he says in no uncertain terms, it's the harshest I've heard him be about Duolingo, which was,
this isn't improving anyone's experience. This is straight up removing a feature that has been vital for everyone using the app's learning experience since day one.
He's right that people liked it, it was useful for people, and they are making it worse for everyone by removing it. I would agree with that. And so I linked her to that video. This is the guy, don't talk to me because I don't like the whole thing in general. He likes it, and he says it's crap. Oh, so that's where those have gone. I thought that I messed up because I started using the classroom version. No. It's gone. They took it away and they didn't really bother telling me. Yeah, I'm not paying for Duolingo. Good choice. It's not worth it. You're right, it's not. You can absolutely go on using Duolingo to pay for it. It's just not a good use of your money. It just isn't. I like the classroom option because it is free, but I don't see any use in purchasing it when there are better apps. Totally. I do pay for Busuu because it actually has a lot more functionality. I paid for Busuu Premium all of last year because I was like, yeah, I'm going to make a review of this and, it's part of my channel and everything. I never did. It wasn't a good investment for me, but that wasn't their fault. That was just because I didn't use it. But this year, they did a round of like 60% off, which is honestly, it's just their normal price. Just wait until they offer you 60% off. And in Australia, that works out to $50 Australian a year. But then I still didn't get it because I was like, the same thing will happen from last year. I probably just won't use it or whatever. But then a few days later, they sent me an offer for 75% off if I make one video about Busuu. That's probably worth it. So I paid for it again, but I'm saying that now to remind myself I've got to do something with that Busuu subscription because I never use it. And some of you will find my review from, again, like 4.5 years ago or something and say like, well, you liked Busuu, but you don't like skill building. Like, surely that's conflicting. It is. I was a skill builder, but now I'm like, well, it's trying to teach you the language in these like little increments, and it doesn't have a lot of places where you can get like decent amounts of the language all at once. Anyway, so she says, I do pay for Busuu because it actually has a lot more functionality. Yeah, and it's like way cheaper. If we're talking like apples and apples, it's a lot cheaper. I didn't start learning on Duolingo. The beginnings of my Spanish education predates language learning apps by a long shot. Yeah, so that'd be traditional classroom kind of thing. I tried it for Arabic and it is too slow. Yeah, totally. That's the thing. Duolingo is slow because it throttles the experience, because the longer you're subscribed for or the more ads you watch, the more money they make. Someone wrote in my comments a couple of weeks ago that there's a name for this in business, and what it is perverse incentives. The thing that you're using or the user experience is motivated to be worsened by the fact that you're paying. The slower the taxi goes and the longer it takes to get you to your destination, the more you have to pay. When really it should be the other way around. But they're making it that way deliberately with Duolingo. But they're trying to hide it under this blanket of like streamlining the process. A process that can't be streamlined. However, it is useful for vocabulary and general practice for someone who already has a year or two under their belt. A year or two of what? Like of learning about Arabic, or a year or two of listening to Arabic? They're different things. So there are reasons for it. But yeah, not going to pay for the privilege of the comment section. No, you've misunderstood, Emma. You don't get to pay for the privilege of the comment section. The comment section is gone and ain't no coming back. You get to pay for the privilege of ChatGPT being built into Duolingo. I also saw that pretty much the day they announced they were partnering with OpenAI, their share price like doubled. This is Duolingo, right? Their share price, I'm pretty sure it went from like $8 US to $15 US per share when they announced that they were partnering with OpenAI. Obviously, AI and OpenAI especially is this massive deal at the moment, and there's just money coming in from everywhere. But it's weird to me because no one really perceived this change as being positive. So I'm like, is that actually going to be better for business? Is that really going to make you more money? The fact that you now charge this ludicrous amount for what is free if you just go on a browser and go to ChatGPT or you use Bing or whatever. It's nothing. It's worthless, and but somehow their share price has doubled despite it still being worthless. In fact, it being more worthless. I don't get this. It's like GameStop. Duolingo is GameStop for language learning, especially since Busuu has a better model for less. Busuu is a better model, but you don't really need Busuu. Just start immersing. Come over to my camp. You know what? I've never heard anyone come to the self-administered mass immersion camp or start in that camp and then move over to one of the other two and be like, oh, why I left the mass immersion camp. Like, no, it doesn't happen because this one's the effective one. I know that sounds really, really bold, but I went from the speak early, speak a lot camp into the self-administered mass immersion camp, and I'm like, yeah, wow, that's how you learn a language. But no one ever goes the other way, and that tells you which one is effective. I'm just reminded of a couple of comments here that are stuff like, hey, it's great to get started, or I got started using Duolingo and now I'm completely fluent, so it absolutely works. It's like, yeah, so did I. I got started in Swedish with Duolingo and now I am very fluent in Swedish. That is not my point. I'm not saying that no one can get started. I'm not saying that no one should ever use it just to see what a language is about or anything. I'm saying that like you can't use it for like years straight and expect to be fluent, and you certainly shouldn't use it for years straight and then claim that that is how you got fluent. You sound ridiculous. You genuinely do. And there are other people saying like, if you don't care how long it takes to get good at the language, then Duolingo works. Okay, firstly, does anyone really not care how long it takes? And I'm talking like apples and apples. If you can spend the same amount of time doing something so much more effective that the results will speak for themselves, it'll just be like, wow, where did you learn Swedish? Where did you learn Spanish? Whatever it is. Why would you not do it? Why would you do the thing that takes way longer? And I'm talking about similar or the same amount of effort, right? People are saying like, oh, well, it's only competing with TikTok and stuff. Like, sure, if you're only going to be scrolling TikTok or Instagram or whatever, then do Duolingo. I think this is very similar to what I heard this guy say about people who start YouTube and only get like a couple of views per video. And when he points out to them, you could have gotten way more views if you'd like called it this and given it this thumbnail or whatever. And they get defensive and they're like, oh, I just do YouTube as a hobby. But then later, he'll hear them complaining about the fact that they get no views and stuff. And he's like, I think if they're honest, they want as many views as possible. They just don't like the fact that I pointed out that they could have done something better. And I think that's the same with Duolingo. When someone like me comes along and says like, just start like watching stuff on YouTube. If you're learning Spanish, watch Streaming Spanish. There's plenty of stuff out there that is way more effective. And people are like, oh, well, I'm just doing it instead of TikTok. Well, just do the other stuff instead of TikTok, because Duolingo is not really much more effective than the TikTok. And what I take an issue with is people going, well, I'm learning using Duolingo. No, you're not. You're just wasting time slightly more effectively. This is just bizarre stuff. Like this person's advocating for Pimsleur. Pimsleur is by far the best method for beginners, and you are less likely to have an accent if you start with it. I would love to see some data on that, because I have listened to the Pimsleur Swedish course and it was ridiculously bad. The accent was probably fine, but I don't think that there's any link between people who started with Pimsleur and people who have a good accent as a non-native speaker. I started with Duolingo. I have a good accent in Swedish. I'm also just good at accents. There's so much stuff that comes into it when we're talking about accents. You can't just go, people who start with the app has almost nothing to do with it. Talking about Duolingo, it's supposed to help you start in a language, not make you fluent. And then someone else says it shouldn't take you years to just get started. Exactly, it should. And this is the crazy thing to me. Like, people will fight to the death to defend Duolingo. And then someone's pointing out that in Hebrew it has many wrong sentences. I get that Hebrew is not one of their more premium courses and it's just run by volunteers and stuff, but like, it's literally teaching you the wrong thing. The wrong thing. It's not just like, that's not like a heaps idiomatic thing to say. It's like wrong. And it's teaching you that. Crazy. The other thing is, I think a lot of people just want a firm answer. A lot of people are happy to hear me say Duolingo doesn't work. I'm not actually saying that, but they would rather that I say that than I say mostly it doesn't work and it's ineffective and blah, 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 blah. And so other people on the other end of the spectrum, they're just like, shut up, it works. And it's because they want that firm answer. My point isn't that like, well, it doesn't work at all. My point is more like, you can do better. You can do better, and it's free and it takes less time. A person called Leif said, I worked out that it takes an hour a day for 4 years to complete the Duolingo French tree. Yeah, I'd believe that. And you still won't understand spoken French. No, you will very much not understand spoken French. So to the people saying like, hey, Lamont, stop pretending that anyone out there actually thinks it works. Here we have Exhibit A. When I was a beginner in language learning, I learned Russian via Duolingo, and I genuinely expected to be fluent as though it were magic. They're not a native English speaker, so I'm correcting some errors, but I have learned pretty much nothing besides basic vocabulary. Exactly. I learned Russian on Duolingo for like a month. I just didn't even remember any of it. Like, obviously I know that it's not going to make you fluent, and certainly not in a month, but like, I genuinely didn't even remember the things I learned. I believe that there are multiple studies that show that things that we do on screen have less impact on our memory than things that we do on paper, basically. So, there's something to be said for that. I tried to learn the Cyrillic alphabet and some basic words in Russian. I don't remember any of it. And I did a lot for a whole month. I actually completed the whole tree in a month. It was going to be a video. I was going to make a video. I completed the Duolingo Russian in 1 month. Never made the video because I probably lost interest, but also I was like, I don't have anything to show for this. I can't do the most basic thing in Russian. So to these people who are like, well, if you just do enough of it, no. It doesn't work. It doesn't matter how much you do. That's another very common argument. It's like, well, it helps me to stay consistent. Does it though? Because if you just do the Duolingo, and I remember being in this phase myself to get to my 1,000-day streak, I wanted that 1,000-day streak and I was like, yeah, I'm being consistent, but I wasn't doing anything else. And this person puts it nicely, staying consistent doesn't matter if you're not actually doing anything useful. You should spend those 30 minutes doing something else. This person says, how about Duolingo as a supplement for language learning? No, you just don't need it. And then there's this thing that not everyone learns the same way. Actually, yes, everyone does learn the same way. People have different things that they like to do that get to that learning, but the learning eventually happens in the same way. I've got it written up there actually. Language learning is, in the simplest definition I can give you, being in situations in which the language holds meaning for you. If you can get yourself into lots of situations, often, in which the language holds meaning for you, it can't just hold meaning, it has to be for you, then you will learn the language. And I didn't really want to talk about the whole Evan thing in this video, but I will just say that what I meant to say in my initial video, and like, you've got to understand that often very hard to kind of complete your essay, your thesis in video form. Often you go like, oh, that bit doesn't fit, and you cut up that bit and you change that, and you sometimes end up not quite saying to a point exactly what you're meant to say. What I meant to say about Evan and why I was using him as an example is, can we at least agree, you and I, if ever Duolingo was going to work for an individual person, it would be Evan. Okay? The guy did a lot, and he did it in one language for like 4 to 5 years, and he lived in the country. And he did other things like reading books and going on Hello Talk. He did all that stuff. And even if we're being generous, we could say like, his German was okay. I don't think that even he claims it was like super fluent or anything. All that Duolingo, living in Germany, books, everything. I genuinely wonder if the Duolingo hindered him more than it helped. Like, I actually wonder if he'd done all the same stuff and just removed the Duolingo, if he would actually be better at German because of that. And that's why I used Evan, right? It wasn't because I'm like trying to troll the guy or anything. I was just like, here's a guy for whom it should work, and it did not work. What can we conclude from that? See, this is what I don't get. This is so weird. Yes, Duolingo works, and it was 80% responsible for my knowledge in Spanish, supplemented by YouTube, books, podcasts, songs, movies, and practicing with native speakers, making up the other 20%? What? You must have done like 1 minute of those things a day and like hours of Duolingo if you think it could possibly, those things, be only responsible for a fifth of what you did, given that you named like 10 things, so they're all 2% each, are they? This person has responded, it's actually vice versa. You could remove Duolingo from this equation and it would be great, but it wouldn't work the other way around. Exactly. I want to make a whole video about these comments because I've gotten a few of them where people say like, I did this and 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 a bit of Duolingo, so yes, Duolingo works. It's like, do you not see the idiocy of that statement? You've named all this other stuff which we know to be effective and we have done so for all time, and then this one thing that I'd say I've put together a pretty good argument for it not being effective and going, yep, therefore it is effective. It's crazy to me. People will go out of their way to find reasons that Duolingo is working for them so that they can keep using it. If you want to use it, that's fine, just use it. But don't argue that it works. I have used Duolingo knowing that it doesn't work and been happy doing that. You will not be happy if you expect any kind of reasonable result from it, because it won't happen. Anyway, please go and watch my other video about investigating a word for 6 weeks. It's really my best video ever. Yeah, that's it. Lo quiero.